Hey guys, we are back with another ThunderCats Ultimates review, taking a look at another one of the villains from this first wave by Super7. So we have got JACKALMAN. So we've already had done Mum-Ra, and there's only 2 villains in this wave, so we've got JACKALMAN this time around. ThunderCats logo emblazoned on our brown mailer box, and then you've got his name down there just below it. Pop it apart, of course. You can pull out our slip cover, and just like Mum-Ra, this guy has Mum-Ra's logo on there as far as his insignia when it comes to the packaging. So the good guys have the ThunderCats logo, and the bad guys have the Twin Snakes logo. Of course, you got the big kind of medallion done up in that red foil design. ThunderCats logo on the front and the back. And then within that box, you've got JACKALMAN in that huge window with all of his accessories, the ThunderCats logo down there on the bottom, more of that black and red motif, and then on the back you've got that big spread of vintage artwork with a nice write-up for JACKALMAN. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here he is out of the package, our ultimate JACKALMAN. And just like the rest of this wave, this guy was provided for the purposes of review by Super7. And this figure is interesting because he is very much like the Mattel figure, very, very much, in possibly a bad way too, because that figure was known for having an actual issue when it came to construction, where the shins were reversed, and I'm pretty sure that problem still exists on this figure. So let's get started, see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. He is, I mean, he's very familiar, very similar to the rest of this wave. You've got a head that can look up a little bit, but not too much. He is unique because he has an armor piece that sits over his shoulders. His fur is actually part of the armor, so it does kind of get in the way a little bit. He can look down slightly, not really any tilt, but you do have a rotation. Arms are still able to go all the way out because the armor is a kind of rubbery piece. Of course, that is going to stop things from going all the way around. The movement is there, they're just in the way. So they go forward and backward. His right, your left, right now will go further than the other side. The arms do have a bicep swivel. You've got your single jointed elbow, and then we've got hinges and rotation at the wrists. He has got an ab crunch that goes back a little bit, forward, and then you've got your waist twist as well. Legs go all the way out, so you can get him into those JACKALMAN splits if you really need to. Even though he's got a furry loincloth, it does not really get in the way just because of how it's shaped. It goes forward pretty good. It does get in the way there, but still pretty much all the way. It is kind of gummy, so it's going to move. He kicks backward. You've got your thigh cut up there. Single jointed knee. We've got a boot cut or shin swivel here, and then you've got rocker, and you've got ankle hip hinges down there. They are kind of janky looking. They're weird just because of how the ankle sits in the foot, but they are quite usable at the same time. So yeah, he's very par for the course when it comes to the line so far. There's really nothing he has here that's really any different than Lion-O or Panthro. The only true thing is that he has armor that sits over top of him, so it does get in the way a little bit. It's just a difference because of his construction. Now, as far as the overall look and feel on this guy, the aesthetics, for the most part, I'm pretty happy with him. He is very, very similar to the Mattel figure. Very similar, actually, and maybe in one negative way. So, for the most part, he is almost identical. There are a few changes, and we will kind of go over them in a little bit more detail. But as far as the general figure goes, I think he looks pretty good. I've always kind of gotten the vibe that there was maybe, almost just maybe, a little influence from the 2011 JACKALMAN from Kanar. And honestly, his bio on the box still references that name. So who knows? Maybe it does. Maybe I'm just seeing things here and there. But I do like the way this figure looks. I like the color combinations of the black and the brown for the harness with the red kind of control knob on there. I do have a little paint flub on it, though. There is like a nick in there, which kind of mucked it up a little bit. You've got that shock of kind of yellow fur on his chest that leads down to the leather belt, and it's got a lot of kind of scrapes and cuts in it to make it look like a textured leather piece with his big bushy green loincloth. And then of course you've got his very brownish orange fur or skin, depending on how you want to look at it from a toy perspective, and it looks really good. I think the feel is really nice. It's all very, very, very much similar to the Mattel figure in terms of overall heft and feel and just texture. We've got the bracer on his wrist with the spotted design, and then you've got where I assume the issue still lies, the shins, the ankles, and I do believe they are still reversed on this figure because they look exactly the same as the Mattel figure. So if that one's wrong, then this one is also wrong. Honestly, it never really bothered me too much, but of course it's something to take a look at. So we'll get them side by side to do a comparison between the two. But I do like this guy. He's got good size. He's got a good heft to him. I do really still like the way that they incorporated the big shock of fur on his shoulder, because that would have made this guy a unique figure if they had to do a unique arm for him, which honestly wouldn't have been really able to be used again. So we've got this piece that is all one piece. So the pauldron on one side, the kind of fur collar up here, and then you've got the fur on his shoulder. And this is actually painted this time around, where the Mattel figure is not. There is paint all over that to just make it a little bit more standout-ish from the rest of the figure, because it does kind of draw your attention, because it is the same color, but at the same time it's a little deeper and more saturated. And I like the fact that it's just a little bit more attention-grabbing than it was on that previous figure. My favorite area for this figure, though, has been and still is the head sculpt, because I really like what's going on here. There is a lot of little detail all over this figure. Tons of, obviously, kind of windswept back fur all over his jowls. There's tons of line work, a lot of little intricate sculpted detail. He has a slight open expression to the mouth, and then you've got those kind of black circles around the eyes with the orange centers in there with the black pupil. And these are a little bit different from the Mattel figure, but it's another thing that we've seen with the rest of this line, just like Lion-O and Panthro, where things are just slightly different to give him a little bit of a different look, just to make him stand out from that previous figure. But the sculpt is still the same great sculpt. Great paint applications. Again, no real issues to speak of there. It's sized really well, and it sits atop that armor really nicely. And then for a comparison between our Mattel figure on the left, Super 7 figure on the right, there are not a great deal of differences here, but there's a few little things that stand out. So of course, the face, the head, looks a little bit different just because of the color of the plastic is slightly different. There's a little bit of different color to that kind of yellow cream look on the face, and then of course the eyes are different as well. Pupil placement is a little bit different, as well as the color of the iris. So they are slightly different, not so much that they're entirely different, but they are slightly different. They have the paint on our kind of fur pauldron on the new figure, no paint on this one, and then of course you've got the yellow on the neck here, whereas he does not have any yellow on the neck on the new figure. The spots on the bracer are different. They aren't quite as busy on the Super 7 figure, still very much the same. And then you've got the ankles or the shins down here at the bottom, and they very much do seem to be in the same position. The one way to tell is on his left, while your right, the indentations and the striation of the muscle are on one side specifically on each figure, so you can tell that the same legs are on the same side this time around. It still doesn't really bother me all that much, but again, they do kind of look a little bit odd the more you stare at them. And then one other little thing that I've noticed is that the toenails are painted a different color. So they're darker brown on the Mattel figure and a little bit of a lighter brown on the Super 7. So when it comes to the differences on this guy, they are relatively subtle, and for the most part, really not much of a big deal. They are very, very close to the same figure. And then we also have to do our comparison to the vintage figure. So vintage on the left, Super 7 on the right here, and they're not really similar in any aspect for the most part. Some of the color schemes are a little bit similar, from the yellow that we've got on some of the highlights to the green loincloth. You've still got the kind of spotted bracer, and then you've got the pauldron on the old figure, but of course it is black and yellow instead of kind of silver, pewterish, and gray. So you can see the influence here, but they are of course very different figures from very different eras, but it's worth looking at them just to see where it all came from. And then as far as scaling size comparisons go, here's our JACKALMAN figure with Lion-O and Panthro. And I know this is definitely one of the areas of concern when it came to this figure originally, because he's definitely too tall. JACKALMAN is not supposed to be this big. He's relatively small, all things considered. Certainly smaller than Lion-O, and he's really the exact same height, if not maybe a tad taller. The only thing that I can think of, and this goes back to my thinking that there is maybe a little influence from the 2011 JACKALMAN, is that version was huge. He was really big. Kanar, and of course, you know, his name is Kanar on the back of the box still. So I still think there might be some sort of influence in terms of that version when it came to creating this overall figure. Granted, this is still supposed to be the original, so he is still a little bit too tall. Now, as far as other figures, other lines go, here he is, you know, next to a Figuarts. So there's Goku, and you can see, I mean, he absolutely towers over Goku. We've got him here with the Ultimates Raphael, and he's very much a taller figure than Raph. Here he is with the Marvel Legends War Machine, so a larger Marvel Legends, but you can see that he still has a lot of size over Rhodey there. And then for a more technically close to 112-ish kind of figure, we'll go with a Stormtrooper in the Black series. So he's got a lot of size on him. I mean, it's definitely an imposing figure, but it's still one of those things where he's not really supposed to be this big. It doesn't really bother me all that much, but then again, you know, it is still a thing, and it was a thing when he first came out, and it's not really changed. Now, as far as accessories goes this time around, JACKALMAN has a pretty decent spread. So we've got the weapons that we had previously, and then of course we've got new stuff, and for me anyway, chief among them being the alternate head sculpt, because for someone who has both versions of the figures, it allows you to be able to more easily display them on your shelf at the same time in different areas, doing different things while having very different expressions. So I just like the inclusion to begin with. But I also do like the idea of these head sculpts being very battle oriented. So of course this is him with a really furrowed brow, nice scowl going. He looks angry, he looks mean, he looks very intense. So I dig that. The open mouth, the exposed teeth, and the, you know, you can see inside that kind of a black tongue mouth that he has almost. So I do like that. It's definitely a very big change up from his more neutral expression on his face. Then we've got, as far as weaponry goes, we've got the club with the spike on the end of it here. So, of course, this is very quintessential for JACKALMAN. Then we've got the axe here, which does have a nice bit of metallic paint on it. And then, of course, you've got some flat gray with the wooden staff aspect of it. It's kind of flimsy, but it's not like bendy flimsy. It's just not really rigid, which I'm fine with in case I inadvertently get to snapping things. Then we've got a few new inclusions, and we've got to start with, we've got some extra hands. So we've got a set of gripping hands, and unlike Panther and Lino, just the one set. So you've got a set of gripping hands, and he has the style pose kind of clawed finger hands on him in the box. But he does have guns, and what he doesn't unfortunately come with are trigger finger hands. I'm not going to say you absolutely need them, but it would have been a nice change just to actually make things a little bit easier to use. But he comes with some guns, but he doesn't have trigger fingers. So we've got a set of various mutant guns. So you've got these two pistols. This one's just done up in kind of a metallic-y, kind of gunmetal-y black. And this one's done up in kind of a navy blue with some gunmetal-y accents. Of course, very different guns, very different designs. And then we've got the big one here, which is done up in a little bit of, it's kind of a blue-gray, but with more of those gunmetal accents as well. So you've got 3 different guns to choose from, and of course 2 varying styles, so pistols versus a rifle. And then you've got the axe, you've got the club, you've got the hands, and then of course you've got the alternate head sculpt. So he does have quite a bit here just to change him up, give you a few different ways to display him, and give you a handful of different ideas when it comes to what weapons you want to kit this guy out with. So at the end of the day, this guy's a pretty solid entry in the line, if not for the fact that he still includes a few of the issues that we saw with that original release. I still have to assume that the ankles, the calves are still a little bit messed up just because of the fact that they look identical to the Mattel release, and he is seemingly a little bit too big. I don't think it bothers me all that much, but again, he's still on the big side when he should be a rather small, sniveling kind of creature. He does include a lot of cool stuff though, don't get me wrong. He is very unique amongst this line because of his furry body nature. That armor fur harness was a really interesting way to actually create the illusion that he has that big fur pauldron almost on his shoulder, and I like the fact that it's painted this time around. I really dig the extra head sculpt that he comes with, just like I do with every other figure in this wave. I really like those alt heads, and then I really like the inclusion of the mutant guns. I'm really happy that we got stuff like that this time around, although at the same time, I wish he had some trigger fingers to go along with him, because while he can hold the guns, it just would have made things a little bit easier. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super 7 ThunderCat Ultimates JACKALMAN. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.